Today we're going to be traveling not too far from the sofa to discuss a local case here to the Sofa Squad. Now this case is tragic, it's disturbing, it's haunting. Today we're going to be discussing the case against Avantae Deven. Hello Sofa Squad and welcome back to the sofa. Sofa's back there. I'm right here. Boys are over there. My name's Paul if you're new to the channel. If you're not new to the channel, my name still is Paul and I'm happy that all of you are here. Now, like I said, today we are going to be discussing a case that is very layered, very deep, very tragic. Now, before we jump into it, I do want you to know that I ain't no lawyer, ain't no doctor, ain't no therapist, ain't none of that fancy credentialed stuff, okay? Only credentials we got up in here is that sofa, my own sass. So just know these are my opinions, thoughts, whatnot on public information from cases that are currently going on or that have happened. I encourage you to do your own research, come to your own conclusions. Well, in a friendly like manner, discuss them down in the comment section. Okay. Now, this video here is going to act as like an overview to this case. This is by any means not like the end all be all deep dive into this or whatever, okay? I'm kind of extracting bits and pieces from this story because it's very layered, as you're about to see, that stick out to me the most, okay? This is still ongoing, so this is alleged. The alleged perpetrator, because of that reason, is currently incarcerated. We'll get to her in a second. The man who you're going to want to follow for this is Chris. He's with WRAL. He's been on this case from the beginning. He's been doing some great stuff with it. In another video, we're going to go over some of the interviews that he's done with people who are close to the case and whatnot. So again, give him a follow, check him out. Now, obviously the most important people in the case are the victims, right? In order to properly talk about them and to get everybody on the same page, we're going to have to talk about the, again, alleged perpetrator first, because as you're about to see, there's a lot of different names, a lot of different locations, this kind of a thing. What this case reminds me of, if you have followed these cases, is think back to Classic and Sincere, the boys out in California. That case right there. Their adopted names were Orrin and Orson, but their biological names were Classic and Sincere. So you might know them by either name or whatever. So think how that case went, where people are changing names and locations and this, that, and the other. That's how this case has gone and is going. Okay, so a woman who is sitting currently in custody, going through the trial process, all the preliminary stuff, all that. Her name is Avantae Deven. Now, she had several aliases and whatnot. We are going to be referring to her as much as we possibly can as Avantae Deven for this video. So she's been hit with several charges, okay? First degree M, 2 counts of concealment of death, 1 count of kidnapping related to London Devon's death, 2 counts of harming children that are related to Blake Devon's death. Now, she is at the Cumberland County Detention Center. She does not have any bond, okay? Thank God. Okay, now this part we're going to get into is like the work with me through this, okay? Because it's complicated, but that's how she's able to get away with this stuff for so long. Avantae has an LLC. It is named Nelson & Johnson, okay? Now, let's get into also like who owns the houses and all this kind of stuff. So, property records from Cumberland County show a LLC company in New Mexico, Nelson & Johnson, okay, as the owner of the home that Avantae Deven and her 2 missing children live in. The LLC, Nelson & Johnson, whatever, it lists Devon as a member and an organizer of the business on the New Mexico business license website. Okay, so there's that part. Now, she's tied to several different locations. They moved to Fayetteville, North Carolina from Asheville, North Carolina, which is Buncombe County. We'll talk about that here in a minute. They've had 2 different known residences so far, okay? Now, this is where, it gets a little bit, confusing. There's the Baradell home, and then there was the Eichelberger Drive home, okay? So 2 different places. Now, there's 2 different direct victims in this. Now, obviously, we always have peripheral victims, but the 2 direct victims that we know of so far, right, that we're going to be talking about mostly here is Blake in London, okay? Now, they were homeschooled. Devon Academy is registered with the state, with the address of the Eichelberger Drive home, okay? This is a religious homeschool program. It was started in 2007 in Buncombe County. Now, according to the investigators and whatnot, Devon family moved to Fayetteville in 2015. In November 2016, they moved to the home, the 1800 block of Eichelberger Drive, where they lived until June 2019, okay? Then they moved to the 1400 block of the Baradell Drive, and that's where they've been. Now, the people who currently live at the Eichelberger Drive home, they're not connected, they've cooperated, they don't have anything to do with them, right? The investigators confirmed that there are 5 children at the house house who had been adopted from 3 different counties in North Carolina. There were 3 boys who are biologically related and then 2 girls who are not related to each other or the boys. So when we sit here and talk about, like, you know, Blake Devon, London Devon, remember, she adopted them. So there's that. So it gets very cumbersome, but I feel like we need to get all this information out to move forward, to be able to, like, talk about this in depth. Now, Avantae Deven has also been in court with situations over the mistreatment of her own mother. We'll talk about that here in a minute, okay? So this is what I'm talking about. Like, you know, obviously 2 children lost their lives, but there's many other victims in this case, including family members that were forced to help conceal the bodies. Okay, so now that we've gotten that preliminary stuff out of the way, let's get to the most important people. Let's talk about the victims. Let's first talk about Blake Devon. His birth name was Trenton Schuler. Okay, now his aunt, Miranda, was quoted as saying, I'm just going to go over a few of these real quick. She called him like an all-American boy. He had blonde hair like his father's. Very happy kid, always laughing, played with trucks. She said that the last time they were together, they played in snow. They built gingerbread houses. And she last saw him and his brother in December 2011. Now, this was around the time that the children were placed into foster care. The bio family, all this type of stuff, they were denied kinship care, that type of stuff. So she said she didn't comment on why they were removed. Now, she did say that there was never a sign that they were unhappy or not fed or not taken care of or anything like that. And she said that Blake was very upset when he was taken away from his mother. Now, the investigators think he was like 10 years old back in 2017 when he lost his life at the home. His remains would ultimately be found incinerated in a burn barrel in the backyard. Now, the other victim, London Devon, let's talk about her. Her birth name is Mariah. Now, her bio mom says that she hasn't seen her since she was like 4 or 5 years old. She was a little bit older, London was. Now, she was believed to have died at the burial home drive like a couple of years later after Blake. Now, here's the sad thing is none of this stuff was ever reported. We will listen to a little bit of a 911 call from Avantae about Blake, but during that part of it, that investigation is when they discover London missing. So they're going in and they're sitting here looking for, you know, Blake, like, okay, what's going on? We got this call. We'll talk about it. And who else is missing? And she was, you know, at this point, like, she was older, right? But it's believed that she was equally as abused, equally as mistreated, equally as neglect, and this is what caused her death. Now, like I said, the remains of both of them were ultimately found in the backyard, incinerated. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Now, there was surveillance footage, and hold your breath on this one. Guess where the surveillance footage was from? I'll give you 3 seconds. You got it? It was from Walmart. Okay. So there is footage of Avantae with 2 other of the boys buying a red cooler. This red cooler would ultimately become London's casket, if you will, okay? And that's, you know, again, we see this so often with Walmart involved in these cases. I mean, it just can't make it up. But thank God it happens that way because this evidence is brought forth. Now, biological and physical evidence would be taken from the Eichelberger drive home from a bathroom upstairs, okay? You see how this is like spread out over locations and time and this, that, and the other. Now, of course, obviously in a situation like this, the investigator is going to be going to the kids and asking like, what happened? What's going on? Okay. Now, the children said that, like I said, you know, London died same way that Blake did. They were starved, they were abused, they were neglected. So they also, one of them was made to participate, like I spoke of, and we'll hear from that probably in the next video. We'll get to that little snippet of the phone call that went out about getting rid of and having to help Avantae cover up the crime. Now, it's also noted in this that London had some type of special needs. And again, like I said earlier, she was never reported missing. So, you know, this is how people go unnoticed, and these people, meaning people like Avantae, are able to get away with these crimes. Now, of course, in this, like, one of the major questions is, how did she get away with this, right? So let's talk about that for a second. So the police said that Avantae didn't even report Blake missing until this year, okay? So we're talking years go by, right? He was last seen in 2022 at a Walmart. This is on Ramsey Street, okay? Now, London was last seen in 2019. So remember these key dates, 2017, and then it's believed that she lived a couple of years longer, and that she also, you know, died at the hands of Avantae. Allegedly. Now, Avantae would try and come up with excuses for this. Let's just listen to one of her 911 phone calls, a little snippet from it, where she's trying to explain away Blake being gone and unaccounted for.
Do you think he is a runaway?
I think so, but he is generally religious, and he used to go back and forth about a Buddhist retreat and meditation, things like that, but this time he never called back. And my daughter did that once for 6 months, and she called, so I thought, okay. It's hard. He's very independent, high-strung, and very bossy, so it's not really unlikely of his character, but I'm sorry, ma'am, what was your question?
Do you think he's a runaway?
I would say so, yes.
When did you last see him?
When I told you during those holiday times, about a year and a half ago.
So what holiday times?
Last holiday, it was between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Around November,
2023 or 2022?
Oh, goodness gracious. 2022.
So he's generally religious and talked about, went back and forth about a Buddhist camp. Yeah, got it. Okay. Now you heard her on the phone, very put together sounding, but also just backtracking. Like anybody calling 911 in a scenario like this of, I haven't seen a kid in years. Yeah, maybe they went off to a Buddhist camp. I mean, come on, right? And I get every circumstance is different. Like there can be some things where it's like, it might make sense for some people. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not trying to just be like, oh, well, that doesn't fit my, whatever. But this right here is so all over the place. And again, we obviously, we don't 100% know because no convictions have come in, but we can generally start doing the math on this as to what took place. Now, speaking of 911 phone calls, a 911 phone call is what kicked off this whole investigation. So back in 2023 of November, the investigators like, this is, where this all started, okay? So officers responded over a mental health crisis at the house on Burdell Drive, okay? Now this is, again, it's where Avantae and everybody lived or whatever. So this was one of Blake Devon's brothers, okay? Calling up, going on or whatever. He's then talking about, I haven't seen Blake in 5 years. He said, last time I did see him, Blake had a broken arm. Obviously, this is going to be major red flags, right? So this kicks everything off and whatnot. Now, it's during this investigation that they find these metal burn barrels that contain the remains of 2 children. This is a teen girl between the ages of 15 to 19, and then a boy between the ages of 7 to 10. Now, once they did send the lab stuff off and all that, they were like, okay, yep, here we go. This is coming back as the missing kids. Now, another layer to this is her parents. And by her parents, I mean Avantae's, okay? So her dad was like some kind of like self-described guru, had a lot of aliases, this kind of back and forth type stuff, right? Then there's also her mother. Let's talk about her for a second. Now, her mother has since passed away. However, the mother too, she had like tons of different names, all this kind of stuff. Now, she lived in the house with, the kids, Avantae, all these people, right? However, it was not a good situation for her. So she had some health issues going on. Now, the judge gave an emergency petition that gave DSS control over the medical conditions of the mother. So once this all kicks off, they see the mother's in here. She's like 95, right? And very poor health. So they took that over and whatnot because they were like, what's going on with her? She was hospitalized after she had a stroke. She was discharged to Avantae. It's like, okay, you're going to go home. You're going to cover whatever. Well, like 11 days later, she goes back to the hospital. She's readmitted. Y'all, she's got pressure wounds, swelling, dehydration, urinary tract infection, you name it, okay? She wasn't responsive. She was unable to communicate. And like I said, she has since passed away. So she probably would have held a lot of secrets of Avantae's, but again, she's since passed. Now, also, there's no telling what she herself suffered at the hands of Avantae. And who knows what happened, when she was younger or whatever. I mean, there's so much going on here. Now, like I said, Avantae Deven is being held. She is on a no bond thing. Thank the Lord, right? She goes back to court on January 16th. There's been a lot of stuff that's been going on with her case and whatnot, like court appearances, things of this nature. This case kicked off about, I don't know, like earlier this year, obviously. I'm filming this at the end of 2024. And I remember seeing about the paper and whatnot. It's just been recently I've had a chance to kind of sit here and like really start going into it. So again, just to kind of summarize the video here and let you know how we're going to proceed with this case. The next videos we'll do, we're going to go into some of the interviews of people who have, number one, been victimized by her. There's interviews with another adopted daughter. There's interviews with neighbors, ex-husbands, these people that paint a clearer picture. To me, it sounds, again, I just go back to this with like Orrin, a classic instance here, Orrin and Orson, the West case out in California, where whether Avantae was doing this for money or what, we don't know yet, right? But what it does appear that the evidence that is shown so far is that her intentions were not pure, right? There was nefarious actions going on here. And at the center of it, 2 kids lost their life. Now, again, the whole thing with the 911 phone call and her calling up, talking about Blake, who's like, what, 7 to 10 years old, like he's a kid, talking about a Buddhist thing. I mean, come on. But remember, the timeline also stopped. They had been dead for years, and she's trying to play this off, so they would have been much older. Yeah, but she allegedly knew what was going on and whatnot. And again, Walmart to the rescue with all this video footage. So what I want to do is for this video, because it's literally, as you see, so layered, so deep, I wanted to get a basic timeline and general synopsis of the overview of this case off. I'll make a playlist, and this will be like the first video there. And so from here, we can start dissecting different parts of the case. So that's it. If you're still watching, well, I do appreciate you. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. While you're down there, if you could, well, drop some sofas off. For myself, Rosco and Spirit, the boys who have slept so kindly, so nicely. That way we'll have a place to hang out down there, talk about this case, all the other cases we do talk about here at the Sofa Squad. And until we do all that, I'll see y'all soon. I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now, don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Rosco on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.